Hello and welcome to Raising Those Spirits. I'm Steve.
And I'm the ghost of Sam.
Yeah, we confirmed after last week's episode this is actually Sam is dead and he is just haunting my laptop, which has to be sad for you, Sam, because I only use this laptop twice a week, once to play D&D and once to record this podcast.
I'm so lonely.
And I'm not even the one
Ooh.
I'm not even the one who uses it when we play D&D. You just hang out with my wife for like 2 hours.
I like your wife.
Oh yeah, no, my wife's great. But,
No, it's
she
it's a
doesn't even
perfectly reasonable way to spend my time.
we don't use the mic or the speakers on the laptop. She just watches Roll 20 from it. We use like a Yeti mic hooked up to my computer, so you can't even like you're just a passive participant staring at a D&D screen with no context.
Ooh, spooky.
This is a good opening. The people will be interested in this.
Well, we're talking about, there's a lot of ghost talk this evening. So I thought I'd bring it in to be spooky. Oh, I was Transylvanian there for a second.
I mean,
Oh,
some of those
ghosts are
ghosts
mostly
didn't
Transylvanian.
talk. Maybe they were Transylvanian.
There's no way of knowing.
Oh
Oh.
man. So in this, I mean, there's a good chance you might have seen the title and just assumed we were doing another book in the series, but we did the movie for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Scary stories to tell in the dark. A movie.
So
Ooh.
we will get to that, but I believe you have a spooky holiday
Even more ghosts. Why am I Transylvanian? I'm going to be talking
because
about a Chinese holiday.
you've been watching Vampirina, haven't you?
I haven't. I
Oh,
have not watched Vampirina lately. No, mostly I'm watching zombies on the Disney Channel right now.
you had a big James Vanderbeek influence there, though.
That's true. And I Vanderbeeked. Anyway, Steve, what I meant to say was this is our new segment. We've been doing it for the last couple of weeks. That's not what I meant to say. If you've been listening to the show for the last couple of weeks, we've introduced a new segment where we talk about spooky holidays from around the world. And Steve, did you know that from July 29th through August 26th of 2022, you should not pick coins up off of the ground? Did you know that?
I didn't, but today we
Mm.
took my son to the park and I saw a quarter and I looked at my wife, I was like, oh, look, a quarter. And I had her pick it up because I was pushing the stroller. And I was like, oh, that's tails side up. I don't think you're supposed to pick them up. I think I just doomed my wife. Are you telling me I actually doomed my wife?
No, that only applies to pennies. The
I
tail
mean,
side up,
but
I believe.
no, but I'm not supposed to pick up coins.
Not until no July 29th through August 26th.
Oh,
We're
okay, so
recording this
we're
in
in the
May.
good.
You're totally safe.
Totally
Yes,
safe. Okay. My
because I am
wife
talking.
gets to live.
Yeah, she's gonna be fine. I am talking about the seventh month of the Chinese lunar calendar, which takes place approximately between July 29th and August 26th. So the seventh month of the Chinese calendar roughly lines up with August um, on the Gregorian calendar. And that is the month of hungry ghosts. And that is the month that we have the Hungry Ghost Festival that happens throughout China and a lot of the Asian countries um, that have Chinese influence. Uh, it is similar to, from my research, it felt very similar. They say it's not the Chinese Halloween. I would say that it is more similar to a Chinese Day of the Dead. It is a holiday where the spirits of the dead are allowed to return. Not even just a holiday, they actually are able to come back for the entire seventh month of their year. They're out. They're allowed out of hell, which is not like the Christian hell. Hell is more of a term just for uh,
The
the afterlife.
afterlife.
The afterlife in Chinese folklore. They're allowed out, and on the 15th day of the month, that's the day of the full moon, because we're on a lunar calendar there, is the Hungry Ghost Festival, when people celebrate the spirits of their departed families and just departed wandering spirits by providing them with food and entertainment and luxury items. And I'll get to that in a little bit in a second. So the origin of this holiday, it comes from, it's not entirely known, but probably comes from Buddhist tradition. The legend begins with Mulian, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and I've seen it spelled a couple of different ways, who was a student of Buddha, and through his supernatural abilities was able to see into hell, where he found that his mother had become a hungry ghost. And in that tradition, a hungry ghost is basically it's someone who died either with sin, someone who died and they weren't buried properly, they weren't given the proper rites when they died, and they end up becoming these very hungry spirits because they're not be able to be satiated um, with food or things that they wanted in life while they're dead. So they become kind of almost animalistic. So Mulian goes to Buddha and explains to him he tried to bring his mother food in hell because he apparently had the ability to do that. I do not know anything about Eastern religion, so I apologize for what I'm getting wrong here.
I mean, there's similar stories out of Japan, so that
Hmm.
you're right. That's an Eastern thing.
Yeah. So he tried to bring his mother food in hell, but turned to ash before it was able to reach her. Buddha tells him that on the 15th day of the seventh month, the power of 1,000 praying monks would free 7 generations of his family from hell, and that what he should do is prepare a feast for them. So that's probably the origin of this holiday.
Okay.
So today, yep, today they still celebrate on the 15th of the seventh month the celebration of all of these spirits returning to Earth. They're able to be back on Earth for the entirety of that month. And the 15th is the kind of height of everything happening. So that's when the big celebration happened.
Cool.
But Steve, what did I tell you? I told you should not be picking up coins
You did.
uh, during that month. And here's why. During that month, there are so many offerings to the spirits, and that's done through um, food. It's through a lot of joss paper items. So it's a quickly burning paper. So they'll do joss paper money. They'll do joss paper iPhones, joss paper like little cars that look like luxury cars, and those are burnt as offerings to the spirits. That's um, giving them those items basically to satiate their hunger. But because those items are always left on the street to burn, or they can be left on the street, not always, it's always possible that people are leaving out other items of value to the spirits. Things like coins or jewelry, other items of value. So it's a taboo to pick those items up during the month because that might be being left there as an offering. So during the seventh month of the lunar calendar, if you see anything on the ground of value, you're not supposed to pick it up because it might be intended to be left out for a spirit. So, Steve, don't pick up any loose change. That's what I'm telling you.
But that's okay for like a little longer.
Oh, yeah, you're fine until for 2022, you're fine until July 29th. That's when this kicks off and it goes through August 26th.
Okay.
There are, yeah, there's some other rules too. If you're at an event that's celebrating the holiday, they will leave the front row open for the spirits to also enjoy the entertainment because they're looking for entertainment. You cannot sit in that front row because you will be taking a spirit seat, and that's considered a big taboo.
I mean, I don't typically sit in the front row ever anyway, so
Now,
I'm okay on that.
neither do I. I feel like they should be giving them a row in the middle. That's where I usually like to sit. Or if it's a really big screen, I'll sit all the way in the back.
Like, I guess it's technically like a place of honor, but it's more like, hey, sit in the seat that nobody wants.
Nobody wants. Well, they're dead. Who are they going to complain to? They're going to go to the manager? I don't think so.
The dead, who are they going to complain to? Have you seen any horror movies?
Literally, yes. No, you're right. That's actually a big part of the movie that we watched.
Yeah.
Who are they going to complain to?
It's like you
Anyone who will listen
disappointed a
to them.
ghost.
People who want to celebrate at home. Um, what you could do is if you're throwing a dinner party, they kind of describe it as a dinner party with a few invisible guests. You leave some open seats. People will do uh, traditional, or the people do kind of non-elaborate cooking, like not big elaborate dishes because it's part of the Buddhist tradition. Simple dishes. It's a good way to teach kids about caring for others because the whole reason that you're doing this is to appease these wandering spirits and people who are in pain. So one of the websites I was on was explaining how it is a really good opportunity to teach your kids a little bit of empathy for people who have who have less than you. So I thought that was a really nice sentiment.
Cool.
Uh, yeah,
I like this one.
yeah, this was really a lot of fun to learn about, and I hope that I can find some sort of celebration for this near me because I would love to experience it with the fun, the burning of the joss paper, the different musical celebrations. I was looking to see if I could find online any like videos or anything of the actual festivals that go on, but I wasn't immediately able to find anything during my research, so I'll keep looking. And at the end of the month, the gates of hell close and the spirits go home.
Did they go home full?
I hope so, because they're not going to be able to get back out for another 11 months. It
Okay.
was, yeah, I'm excited about this one. I really hope to find something near me. If anybody wants to learn a little more about it, I learned about it on CNN.com, ChineseFortuneCalendar.com, ChineseAmericanFamily.com, and WorldHistory.com through a video that they put out on YouTube.
All right.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really liked that one.
Cool. So what are you drinking this week?
This week, what I drank to celebrate the film Scary Stories that to tell in the dark. It takes place in Pennsylvania, so I found the Pennsylvania cocktail on
Oh no. Oh no.
AbsoluteDrinks.com.
We forgot to compare notes this week.
Did you also find the? Okay, so we both drank the Pennsylvania drink
We both have the
cocktail.
Pennsylvania cocktail. Let's make sure you have the same one as me. It's on
Okay.
Absolute Drinks.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, we're on the exact same.
Oh my God, we think too similarly. We had the exact same idea. So you did Cuban rum, 2 parts Cuban rum, 1 dash of grenadine, and half a part pineapple juice.
And then you fill a shaker with ice cubes, add all the ingredients, shake and strain into a cocktail glass.
I'm glad that we did the same drink this week. That's nice. Now we can compare what our thoughts on it were. How did you find this drink?
I mean, I've always drank this drink. I've been drinking this drink since before I was old enough to drink.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, don't tell the kids that.
I mean, this isn't a show for kids. This is a show for adults.
Adults with kids.
I
So,
specifically check the box when I upload this to all of our sites that this is not for children.
not for children, for people who have children. There's an important distinction there. I didn't really like this drink. I
I
was not a
mean,
big fan.
usually I add another juice in.
Oh yeah, like what?
Orange juice goes nicely in here. Grapefruit juice goes very good in this. Um, those are kind of the two big ones. You can also throw in some cranberry and do like a Bay Breeze type of a thing.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what kind of a fruity mood you're in, but this is kind of like a base version of what I would normally drink myself.
Hmm. Well, I'm more looking forward to a big pile of canned pineapple that I now have in my fridge that I'm gonna probably
Ooh.
chow down on after we are done recording. Delicious. Wow. I don't know why I did the cat noise there.
I mean,
I'm aroused. I'm aroused by this drink I didn't particularly care for.
look,
Wow.
it it doesn't taste good, but it gets you going.
Okay.
Um, why not?
Why not?
You know what? Make the drink and tell us what it does to you. Does it make you meow?
Does this drink make you meow? That's you can put that on a t-shirt.
We just absolutely lost our core audience. Our three
John?
listeners. Yeah, our three listeners are over this.
Oh my god. So, scary stories to tell in the dark, the movie. Now that we are at the
Yes.
that we've already read the original trilogy of books.
So, overall, before we
Mhm.
really get into it, how did you like this one?
I liked it well enough. I
I
think
really liked the first half.
sure,
I watched this in two parts, and
as did I.
so I turned it off right before the spider face incident.
Hmm.
And,
Classic moment from the book.
yeah, and I knew it was coming because that's one of the only moments that's actually from the books that's in the movies, which we'll get to that later. And up to that point, I was actually really vibing with the movie, and then the second half of the
Mm.
movie, I was like, did I just come back in a different mood, or is the second half of this movie not as good as the first half? And I did enjoy it. Like overall, I'm planning on watching the next one.
Yeah, yeah. The which I think they're in pre-production now, or I don't know. It's been announced.
No, they're
We'll see
actually
when it comes
in
out.
They're in production now, I believe.
Oh, it's
For
actually shooting now.
I believe so. I believe it was past pre-production when I looked at it on IMDb.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'll check out the next one too. That's
yeah,
that's
it's Guillermo del Toro writing, and then okay, let's see if I can get his name right. It's Andres. Um,
Oh, I do not know how to pronounce the director's name.
uh,
There are some unregu not there are some characters I don't recognize in that name.
Overdal.
That's how
Um,
I would say it.
yeah, I believe that's Andres Overdal. He directed. I don't know if you ever saw it. You see Troll Hunter?
No, I never saw Troll Hunter.
Oh,
That's one
Troll
on my
Hunter.
list of things I need to check out.
Troll Hunter's really good. My wife and I really like Troll Hunter. It's a lot of fun, and you can definitely see the second I saw that he was the director, and I was like, oh yeah, I can see it. I can see what he's bringing here. So it's a really good team of two people I really like with Del Toro and Andres.
Oh, he also directed The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is one of my favorite horror movies I would say of the last 10 years.
I have not seen that one, but I did recognize it. He's done a few pretty cool movies. Um, he tends to jump between like American horror and then do like a Norwegian one and then an American one and then a Norwegian one. There's a few Norwegian directors who are doing that. I believe the director who did Dead Snow was doing that, where he would like do a Norwegian horror and then jump back and do an American one. Oh yeah, that's exactly what he's been doing. He did American Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Is that the Jeremy Renner one?
Yep, and he just kind of does like back and forth, back and forth. What happened to Monday? If you saw that
Oh,
one,
I've heard good things. I haven't seen it, but I heard that was good.
I heard very good things. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of cool Norwegian horror directors that are doing really cool things. I try and keep track of them and see whenever they're doing something new. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. So let's start off. You want to just do like preliminary spitball thoughts, or do you want to go through the movie and kind of pepper them in?
Oh, my main thought is it's inspired by the books, and I mean, it's very clearly inspired by the books, but it's not the books.
Very,
It's not an
very
it's not
much.
an yeah, it's not an anthology. It's a full it's a story with a plot.
It's a
Um,
full-on period piece, which I did not realize going into this.
yeah, it takes place in '68, but you could really, other than the fact that the teenagers didn't have cell phones, I don't know that it really. I don't know what it being set in 1968 did for it, other than making it feel a little bit more worn in. I was wondering where 1968 came from, because when I think of these books, I think of the '80s.
I kind of
Um,
think, well, I think it was almost like because they end up at a drive-in at one point, and there was definitely like a drive-in movie feel to these books.
mhm.
Like, it's make out point. There's a man with a hook on his hand. That type of a thing kind of harkens back to this that the 60s is when these type of stories were incredibly popular.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, there, my wife, who's a history buff, pointed out a bunch of weird parallels because they keep focusing on the 1968 Nixon election
Yeah, they do.
and they keep jumping back to it throughout the movie. And I was just like, what in the world? And she was like, oh, actually, that has like a bunch of underlying similarities between what was actually happening in the country at that time, and also specifically that election where you had a candidate who was telling the truth about the Vietnam War, and then you had someone who was like flat out lying about it, and the gaslighting, and like basically everything that happened to the lead villain is what happened to the candidate who lost to Nixon, and she gave all these really good
Hmm.
parallels, and I was like, you can't expect anyone to pick up on any of that. It's like a really deep pull.
Oh. No, that makes sense.
Honestly, I feel like the only reason to really have this in 1968 was to keep the casual racism in, which
Okay.
was honestly a part of the film I kind of could have done without, but
The
what
use of was it wetback
wetback,
around
yeah,
land a lot.
and just like the casual racism of like the migrant workers coming into town, and I was like, what are you doing here? Are you going to be moving along soon? I was like, why is this necessary right now?
Well, I mean that hasn't gone anywhere.
It hasn't, but
I would say as a Hispanic person who generally passes as for white, I will tell you, white people have said some racist stuff to me about Mexicans,
I've
and I've
been
had to be
there.
like, right? It's like I've had to be like, I'm Mexican,
My
and then
one
it's
of
those,
my
oh,
one of my favorite stories ever was when you and me were working on a movie and they used your car in a scene.
oh my god, I forgot about this.
Oh, I think about that lives rent free in my head. That
Like, oh, this
lives.
looks like the car a
Yeah, this looks
Mexican
like the car
family
of
would
Mex.
drive. It's
You know,
like,
Sam is Mexican.
yeah, I'm Mexican, and this is my car.
Yeah.
It's always so awkward, but I'm like, I don't. It's like I'm not going to apologize for being a Hispanic person in your presence while you said something racist. So
Yeah.
better apologize, and they usually don't. It's like, okay, good work. So that is my a little bit of my experience with racial tension in the United States growing up.
It didn't add a lot to the plot. It was almost just like a lazy way to get the cops involved.
I think it was, yeah, it felt like kind of a lazy way to make the villains more villainous. It's just like, oh well, they're racist, and our lead characters are not racist. So they, when they encounter this young, very handsome Hispanic
So
gentleman,
handsome. I'm so glad you said that. I was like, this is like the most handsome man in the world right now. Like this
he,
guy, this kid feels out of place in this movie. He's so handsome.
yeah, I was like, oh, this very handsome drifter. I'm like, you don't look like a drifter. I guess he might be only recently adrift.
He was only adrift for a week, we find out, but still, no one who's been living in their car for a week looks that good.
He just sort of looked fine. I was like, why are people giving this guy so much trouble? He's so handsome.
That's why this guy just came into town. Everyone's odds just went down.
Yes, they did. Um, what were we even talking about? We were talking about, yeah, the casual racism of the movie.
Oh,
For
why
you, it
it was
took you
set
out.
in
It took you out of the
68.
movie.
Well, it didn't take me out, but I was just like, it had been like a really long day, and I was just like, oh, I just wanted to see some teens get slashed, guys. Like, not to, completely discount this major issue that is still happening today and affects a lot of people with my white privilege of not wanting to see this in my downtime. But, if I watch those movies and I read those news stories, and then I put on Slasher Flicks to kind of like
Very-
detox from a full day of reading about that. I don't know. I know this is like weird privilege speaking, but I was just like, ah, okay. I
No,
just
I think that. I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was just say I couldn't think of another reason for it to be in 1968 except for the fact that they kind of wanted to do that kind of a plot.
Yeah, because thinking about the these books again for me. I was reading them in the late '80s, early '90s. I think the first one came out in '89, so probably mostly the '90s. That felt to me like the era it should have been set in.
Yes, it came out, I believe, in '82 was the first book.
Oh,
Um,
so it was okay. So it was
so it was like
earlier than
80.
I thought.
The last book, the third book, came out in '91 or '92, and the second book came out between. So, but it should have been '80s, '90s. You're right, like somewhere in there.
Yeah, because these books are these are appealing to Gen X and older millennial nostalgia. So I would have expected it to be set and because outside of like the youth audience who you would have going to see this movie, the other group of people who would be going to see this movie would be people our age who grew up with these books. It feels like you would want to appeal to that sense of nostalgia. But that's just me. I think
This movie had
1960s are so like ethereal
this
films.
movie had huge kids on bikes vibes. And like kids on bikes is such a '80s trope
Truth.
that it seems weird to not do it. They are in fact for a while kids on bikes in this.
Are.
And it's just like the Goonies, the Monster Squad, Stranger Things, all that entire concept of just like kids dealing with this mystery is such an '80s trope and dropped it in 1968. And again, there's kids on bikes movies that take place in the '60s, like It and things like that. But it Stand By
Definitely
Me.
definitely felt more 80s to me than it felt 60s. Other than the Nixon stuff, which again, it's just kind of sprinkled in the background. It just did not. That setting could have. They easily could have said it was 1984 in
I
some small town in Pennsylvania, and I would not have noticed the difference because the clothing, it all felt very. The clothing felt contemporary. Those kids, you could have put those kids into a movie that took place now in 2022, and none of them would have looked out of place.
With the exception of the older sister, I agree.
Okay,
The older
that's fair.
sister had like big sock hop vibes.
Truth.
But yeah, it was. I think it was just the amount of stuff people were getting away with. Like in the '80s, it was a little harder to get away with just like flagrant stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like, are you drinking and driving again? Well, get back in that car and go deliver those eggs. Like that. That's got more of a 1960s vibe.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I like that. Deliver the eggs. I don't want to deliver these eggs. Go deliver the eggs. Eh.
So let me just go through my notes. I feel like we're getting to the point where we gotta actually start talking about this
Let's
movie.
talk about the plot of the movie.
Let me just run through. It's a period piece. Okay, okay. Yeah, let's get into the movie. Um, so starts off small town Pennsylvania. One kid has signed up for Vietnam so he can kill some commies to immediately set the tone that he is a bad guy, and b this is the end of the '60s.
Right.
And a bunch of teenagers are prepping because it's Halloween, and they're going to go out for what they are saying is their last Halloween. I think before college. Is that ever fully established?
Yeah, they say it's gonna be their last Halloween. I assume that they're all seniors in high school.
But then
If
what's
they,
the sister and the older bully wearing the Letterman jackets deal? You know what I mean? Like there are clearly upperclassmen to them.
oh, no, I think the bully was in their year. And the sister was younger.
The sister was younger? She's like
Yeah,
two
she was
feet
supposed to
taller
be.
than him.
It was mostly her hair.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think so.
I had
Again, if you
big
haven't watched
sister
the movie,
vibes off of this.
oh no, Chuck refers to her, the character Chuck, who's one of our main quartet of characters, refers to Ruth as his younger sister at some point. So
Mind
she, I think,
blowing.
is a little younger. Yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't be their last Halloween.
I
I
mean,
think they were graduating.
okay.
Should
I
watch. We should watch these movies twice.
So okay, they're going out for Halloween, and the guy who's going to Nam that bullies them apparently steals their candy every single year.
Hmm.
Is that the vibe we got?
That is what was stated.
And so this year they plan a series of pranks to get back at him because it's their last chance to get back at him. And this is where the kids immediately lost me because they
Oh,
pl-
the
they plan this so they put so much planning into this and then suck so hard. Like they egg his car and like have him steal a decoy bag full of like really dirty laundry and then throw like flaming bag of dog shit into the window and
hot dog,
well
hot
yeah but
dog.
you
That
know
was
but that's like
human excrement.
yeah
That
human
was
shit
human excrement.
into the window and it's on fire and the guy crashes his car and they just stand in the street gawking and I'm like no you run the second you throw this flaming bag you gotta run because otherwise they're gonna identify you and I was like oh these kids aren't gonna make it through this movie.
That was a bad plan. They had no escape.
They had no escape, no masks, no nothing. And the kid's younger sister was on a date with the guy and she immediately IDs him. So just terrible plan. So they run into a drive-through to hide, and they end up in kid number four's car,
Our
hiding out.
his our handsome Hispanic young
Handsome
man who is
Hispanic young man who is a drifter living in his car.
find out later that he's draft dodging,
That's the
which,
big
you know,
reveal.
plan.
Yeah, good
Yes.
plan. I mean,
I mean, I would have
honestly,
done the same thing.
he
I'd
was
have done the same
blending in
thing.
as a migrant worker and no one was asking any questions. It was a pretty good plan.
It's a pretty good plan.
Um,
Well, these three kids show up and just like get in his car. They do not know him.
they,
They just pick his car to hide in.
he's
He
literally
goes
just
along with
passing
it.
through. But he gets roped into all their bullshit, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to go to a real haunted house? Because it's Halloween. There's clearly a scary movie at the drive-in." And what do you do when a bunch of random kids pop into your car and say, "Do you want to see a real haunted house?" You clearly
You
go.
go with them. You go with them. Of course you do. Oh my god. What? He was very lucky that they were not a group of serial killers.
Right? Like my God.
Oh, hi. Thank you for letting us hide in your car from those bullies. Hey, person we don't know, would you like to go to a secluded location with us?
In
Oh,
the
you
middle of the
would?
woods where no one can hear us scream.
Especially in a town where people have been pretty overtly racist to him.
Yeah,
Like, how do you know that these aren't just some, like, clever racists?
yeah. Like, let's go find that house is right behind that really good lynching tree over there. Let's go into it.
Yes. Luckily, they weren't racist. Unluckily, the house is truly haunted.
Yeah, so they go into the house, and town lore states that, like, 70 years before, um,
Yeah, I
y-
think it was 1899.
yeah, so like 70 years before, the family that founded the town had a secret daughter that they made live in, like, a secret room in the basement. And she would whisper stories through the walls to the children in town, and then they would die. And if you go into this house and you ask her to tell you a story, you'll all die. So they go into the house and they ask her to tell her a story because kids have no survival instinct when they're 18.
Yeah, if it was Halloween night and I was sneaking around a haunted house, you know what I would do? Not do that. I would not do it.
Are you a fan of Cabin in the Woods?
Love Cabin in the Woods. I love that movie.
So there's a scene where they find the secret room in the basement, and there's like a creepy music box, and she starts winding it, and like the music starts playing, and I just had that like Fran Kranz moment where I was like, could we draw the line at winding the creepy music box in the torture room? Like
Yeah.
this is too much, kids. So they awake the spirit. They steal the book that she wrote all her scary stories in, and they go home.
Which is, I guess, our version of the scary stories books that exists in this world.
But it only appears with stories of people that the ghost has cursed. So their names all progressively start appearing in the book, and stories about them dying start appearing.
Hmm.
And then it's off to the races to figure out why this is happening and how to stop it.
So yeah, so that's when we get into the stories that come from the books. Each time a new story is told, it's kind of like a remixed version of one of the stories from the three original books.
Yeah, the only story that actually got pulled from the books was the red spot, which was the one that me and Sam discussed in last episode about the spiders bursting out of that woman's face. Everything else was a
Although,
very rehashed version.
yeah, I would say that that one was yeah, that one was definitely the closest to how it actually appeared in the book. But we have appearances by Harold the Scarecrow. He's all over the marketing for this movie.
Yeah, and
Because he
honestly,
just is so incredibly creepy.
I think I liked his the most. Harold's was done really well.
So that's the first big scare, big like haunt ghost scene of the movie. Is Harold is the one to attack the bully who chased them earlier in the film.
Because he
It
was in
it's
the
a,
house chasing them, so he got the curse too.
yeah, that was a scary sequence. That was really genuinely quite scary.
Yeah, that was well done. Honestly, I think the
Um,
scariest part of the movie we kind of skipped. So when they're in the haunted house, one of the kids, while they're exploring, like hides in a cabinet to scare one of his
mhm.
friends. And when he opens the door to the cabinet, he's back in the house in its glory, like 100 years before. And there's just this blind old woman in a mourning veil sitting on a bed, but next to her is just this Doberman staring at him. And that was like a really unnerving shot. Like, not the woman so much, but just like opening this and being transported through time. And there is this big guard dog just like locked eyes with you. So you're immediately trapped. There is immediately a dog that, you know, can and will eat you.
Mhm.
I just thought like that was like a really well put together, actually like unnerving scene.
Yeah.
But
So it wasn't any of the ghost imagery. It was just that sort of like very
the
strange moment.
surrealness of it was very. It did that good like cockles on your back like ugh
Mm.
feeling. But yeah, Harold was the first like big scare of the movie, and I think they knew it and they delivered.
Yeah, that scene was scary.
So after
Uh,
Harold, the second story is the Big Toe, the one that me
oh
and
yeah, the
Sam
very
really
first
had to
story from
wonder
the first
about.
book.
Honestly, that kid deserved to die. That's in my notes.
Augie.
August deserved to die.
Why
It,
do you think he deserved to die? What did he do to offend you, Sal?
well, besides the fact that they immediately were like, don't eat anything, and he just starts eating food after someone was already like, what do you mean you have stew? I didn't make stew. And he's just like, well, I'm going to eat it. And they're like, Augie, don't eat the stew. And he's like, I'm going to eat it. And then he has like five chances to get out of the house, and instead he crawls under his bed and
Hmm.
closes his eyes. Just no, not a single survival bone in that body.
Oh yeah, and then he gets pulled into some gaping void by the ghost of the toe.
Yeah, because he couldn't
Um,
avoid it. Because he was just curled up under the bed with his eyes closed. It knew you were in the room, buddy. So,
and yeah, that was again that was a remixed version of the one of the of two stories actually from the books, because the uh,
yes.
ghost was one of the ghosts from I think the haunted house. It was a later
Yes,
um story.
that was some art that you specifically said was like very unnerving.
Yeah.
And they brought it to
Uh,
life for you.
did. I thought they did a good job. I mean, the special effects in this movie were great. Most of the ghosts looked really uh, true to what was in the artwork of the books. Some of them I thought were a little bit too CGI heavy, especially again towards the end.
Yeah, towards the
But that one
end,
worked.
I was kind of bummed at first that this was only a PG-13 movie when I saw it was coming out, but I think they did a really good job with that.
I think it had to be PG-13. You don't want to do a hard or R on these this because it was, these are books for kids that they're adapting. I was surprised that it was as I want to say graphic. There was nothing. There was never any gore or anything. You never see blood. Um,
Kid gets a like a pitchfork through the chest though.
yes, but no blood.
Yes, straw comes out instead.
That was the scarecrow part, so it becomes straw. Um, one of the things I wrote the reviews I was reading saying how it is a real good intro horror movie. Something that you can use to get your kids into horror. Um, before you move them on to any of the actual harder stuff, and I think that's fair. I would put this into the category of like sleepover horror movies.
Yeah, this definitely had like a very long episode of Buffy without Buffy vibes.
Yeah, seems fair. This could have easily been handled. This would have been wrapped up by Buffy Summers in 45 minutes, no problem.
Yeah, like if this is like if Buffy went on vacation for a week and you just stayed in Sunnydale and followed like random people who died,
This is
um
what was happening.
yeah, that's basically what it would have been. And it's a good introduction to horror. So, then we get to the next kid, Chuck. Chuck also deserved to die, Sam.
Oh no, it was Chuck's sister before
Well,
Chuck. It
she
was
doesn't
Ruthie.
die though, because she just gets spider faced.
But yeah, she gets spider face, but she doesn't die. But they mentioned that she's like gone crazy and she's never going to be out of the asylum.
But then
I feel
she,
like it's a little early to tell.
I said the exact same thing. I was like, "Wow, that happened about 12 hours ago, bud. You think she might calm down by tomorrow?" It's a
Like
little early to be making the never getting out of the asylum assumption when she's, you know,
I mean, like it's a traumatizing experience. Nobody would ever want spiders to burst forth from their
and
face.
then try and eat them.
Ugh. But I feel like that if that happened to me, yeah, I'd probably go full on, you know, breakdown for a week or two, perhaps longer. I'd probably always have horrible spider dreams, but I feel like within a couple of weeks, if not a few months, I'd probably be ready to re-enter society. So I feel like the cop who delivered that line was not really giving Ruthie her due.
She
She's
shows up
gonna
at
be.
the end of the movie and she's fine, seemingly.
She doesn't talk though. She's in the back of a car, and I think she has a little bit of a distance behind her eyes. But I think she's gonna be all right.
How did they get her out? That's like
I
my big
mean,
thing. We'll get there. We'll get there. It's on my
we'll get there. We'll
notes.
get there. That's yeah, yeah.
So then
Chuck.
then
Oh
we
yeah. So when they're researching the history of the haunted house in a mental asylum, because there's always a mental asylum in these movies. It's always a mental
there
asylum.
has to be.
They have to go. They go to the mental asylum to um, research Sarah, the woman who told scary stories in the house to the children. That's when Chuck gets it.
So
The
Chuck is the kid who saw the red room. With like the creepy old woman and the Doberman. And so the files are kept in a room called the Red Room. And so he won't go with them because he's terrified of the Red Room. And he had a dream, which is one of the stories that I really liked that I've talked about in the previous episodes, with the oogie boogie looking girl who
Mhm.
says like this is a bad place, you shouldn't be here, and so he won't go there. And I'm like, separating from the group at this point is the dumbest thing you could do. Uh, people
Worst possible plan.
people are only attacked when they're separated from the group. So he immediately separates from the group, and they did another really cool sequence. So the girl in the book, who looks like Oogie Boogie, isn't a villain. She's more like a portent of doom, but she's a villain in this movie. And they do a cool thing where every time he goes down a different hallway, she's there walking towards him. But the previous one doesn't disappear, so there's just more and more and more of her appearing and closing in on him. And he just kind of stops and takes it. He doesn't try and like juke out of the way or slide around her or tuck and roll at the last minute. He just kind of,
He lets her consume him entirely.
yes. I liked
Yeah,
Chuck.
where
He seemed to have up until this point the most survival instinct of anyone in the movie.
yeah, and he could have really, I do believe, could have solved his problems with ducking.
Yes, she was not
It's a
moving
quick
fast at
duck.
all.
No, her whole thing was she was slow. Like, yeah, you could have gotten past her, man.
Yeah. Like
At least try.
at least try. If like you just keep ducking and then you're too tired to keep ducking anymore and she finally gets you, so be it. But to
Put
just
the effort in.
yeah, check minus, man, did not put in the effort. So then of course, clearly as is in all these movies, they get arrested because there's a bunch of suspicious stuff going on and they're always at the middle of it.
There's already a few. I mean, there's like 3 disappeared people at this point. The
Yeah,
last few days that they were connected with. That seems fair.
and they're connected to all three of them. And so the cops arrest them, throw them in the cells, so when the next scary story starts, they are trapped. And they really made this one weird. This is, I believe, it was one of the joke ones at the end of one of the books.
The jangly man.
The Jangly Man, but it wasn't called the Jangly Man. What does he say when he falls out of the chimney?
He says, and I'm clicking back to where it says it on the IMDb page. Hold on. He's a very remixed from a couple of different stories, from what I understand.
Yeah, so
So,
they took two different stories about a man in a chimney and put them together and just made that one person, basically. So there's a story about an old woman who lived by herself and said she wished she had some company. And then some feet fall down a chimney, and then a body and some legs and a head, and they all come together and form a body. And she's like, "Why are you here?" And he was like, "I'm here for you." But then there's another story called Mitai Doti Walker, which is like a noise that's coming down the chimney, and a dog starts like, you know, basically like doing like a cadence back with it. And that actually starts to happen in this movie. And then in the book, it's one of the jokes, and the guy just looks at his dog, and the dog turns to him and says, "Me Tai Dodi Walker," and the guy says like, "Oh my God, my dog just talked," and that's the joke. It's not that there's like a weird voice in the chimney or anything, and so they merged these two together for whatever reason. I guess it was creepy, but
was.
it was simultaneously really well done, and also I think the CGI was lacking just a little bit.
Yeah, that was the one that I was like, this doesn't look quite good.
And they did some cool things with like the body being able to come apart and therefore like get to them through little spaces and stuff like that. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite adaptation of the books that we got. In fact, it might have been my least favorite.
I'd go with you on that. I think it was my least favorite monster.
And I
That's
think
one of the problems when you have so many monsters in a movie that started feeling kind of like the was it Annabelle 3, the Conjuring movies, where basically it's all like a bunch of different ghosts in a house.
yeah, cuz like and I think this is why I didn't like the second half of the movie as much cuz the first half was so solid. And then the second half, like the CGI started going down a little, and they just kept throwing more and more stuff at you faster and faster. So, but it starts going after the our gorgeous drifter, who well, it clearly kills the cop who just stands there dumbfounded, doing nothing after shooting it in the head and it doesn't die. He's just like, well, I'm gonna stand here till it dies. Um, and they get his keys and they escape, and then they separate. And our gorgeous drifter fights the jangly man while she has to go to the house because they've discovered that the lead villain who's haunting them wasn't a villain. She was actually trying to save the town and was committed and eventually killed by her evil family who was
Didn't want her
covering
to
it.
leak the secrets.
Yeah, she was trying to save the town from an atrocity they were committing. So they sullied her name, and she now curses this land. So the main girl's got to go convince her to stop doing this, and the other one's got to basically run from the jangly man until she does this. So it's that race where will she break the curse before he dies? And this is definitely a case of you build up the look of the villain to the point where when you actually see them, you're just disappointed.
Yeah, I didn't really love her white ghost sort of look when we finally see Sarah, our main monster.
You kind of see Sarah in a mirror at one point, and it looks really cool. And then you see her, and I'm like, oh, never mind. It's like the
It doesn't
shark.
live up to the other monsters in the movie.
Yeah, at all. So, then we get that thing where she, saves them both, but her friends don't come back. But she believes the stories. The way to bring them back is in the book, and so she takes the book again. And it's her and her father and Spider Girl going. I don't know where they're going, but they're in a car
Just
leaving town, and like it was the most confusing ending. And I'm like, her father has had nothing to do with this movie. He has had zero run-ins with any of the supernatural, and no reason to believe her. And they have apparently broken into an insane asylum, kidnapped her friend's younger sister, and are on the road for some reason.
yeah. I I was wondering if that like tied into some story from the book, and I just didn't realize it. But there was nothing that I could
Nothing
read
that
through.
triggered for me.
Yeah, so I think it was just a way of leaving it open-ended with her saying like, "My friends are gone, but I don't think they're dead. They're just trapped somewhere. I need to figure out how to get them out," like you said. So it was more like letting us know that this was going to be a series. I assume they intend to make it three movies, if not just for the fact that trilogies are the standard, but also because there were three books.
And
Um,
they've got more than enough stuff to pull from.
yeah, there's plenty more. I would say that I think this was a little long. I think this movie could have been a 15 minutes shorter. I feel like this was an hour and 45 minutes. It really should have been an hour and a half.
I agree. I agree on that. It got a little long towards the end. I think they might have gotten like screwed up by because I know this was in production for some time. Like pre-production. And like between Fear Street and Stranger Things, I feel like a lot was taken from them where they didn't want to just be rehashing concepts that were already big.
Mm,
But you know what I mean? Like Fear, like I think this movie could have been really good if they jumped through eras because the books definitely have eras that they cover. But
mm.
Fear Street did that. And they definitely had that 80s kids on bikes feel, but Stranger Things kind of has that cornered right now. And I understand them wanting to get like a unique feel, but I think by doing that, I'm not 100% sure where they're going to go from here. But we do have
Yeah,
three
I would
books worth of stories.
think they were definitely pulling a lot from Stranger Things because Fear Street came out later, I think, but it might have been in production around the same time. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I would say that they were really pulling hard from Stranger Things, um, with its whole vibe.
I was more saying Fear Street, like, you can't do that for two and three. You can't, like, jump through
Oh,
eras
okay.
or anything. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
You're
like if they want to do part two, they shouldn't do what they did where they were jumping around in time.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it would be weird for them to be like, this story is actually like, now we need to do all these stories that take place in the 20s and, kind of jump around to follow the thing because that's already kind of being done.
Oh yeah, sure. Um, I mean, there's plenty more. There's plenty more that they could do. I think the problem with this, one of the problems I had with this movie was a little too generic. I liked that they pulled the aesthetic from the books with the way they designed the monsters. But it felt like so many other horror movies that I've had on in the background while I was doing my laundry or something. There wasn't anything that was like particularly grabbing. And that could also be because it was made to be accessible to younger audiences. So I don't think they wanted to do anything that was too graphic or like too hard to follow. But at the same time, I feel like this, yeah, I would read the books to probably someone who's a little older than my daughter. Like, when after I read them, the last two episodes of this show, I realized I was like, okay, she's still too young for most of this. But, when she hits 7 or 8, it would probably be a good time to pull her into those books. And this movie, I don't think it would be accessible to anybody who is, under 10 or 12. And then I think it might be a little bit much. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about this movie.
Again, looking at my notes tonally from the two nights that I watched it, the first night I was like, yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. And the second night I was like, oh, yeah, well, this is a movie we watched for the show. Like, again, I'm definitely going to watch the next one. I want to see where they go. The
Mm,
first half had enough really good stuff that I'm willing to give it a chance. Like, maybe they're just finding their footing, or maybe they had a really good pilot idea, and then when they had to flesh it out, it didn't. You know what I mean?
mm,
I'm interested to see where this goes.
yeah. I'll definitely see the second one when it comes out. I was reading one of the questions when they were making this movie, or one of the questions was posed to Guillermo del Toro, was why did they make this like a long form narrative instead of an anthology? His logic being that an anthology is only ever as good. It's like it's always as bad as its worst movie or its worst section, and it's never as good as its best section. I thought that made a lot of sense. You're right. Like, one bad sequence in an anthology film will kind of tank the whole anthology film. Because it's broken up into these sections anyway, it still feels like an anthology. It feels almost like watching like episodes of a TV show that are strung together.
Yes, that's the thing. This seemed like it was a mini series that got shortened into a movie.
Yeah. Maybe as a miniseries it would have worked better.
Yeah, I could have done this. Like, I know we already said it should have been shorter, but I could have also done this in, like, again, a 3 or 4 part series where it was like 45-minute episodes or an hour episodes, and just kind of.
Sure. You know what? That's the exact same way I felt about the Eternals, which was like 2 hours and 45 minutes. That movie was way too long. But I was like, this movie either needed to be like an hour shorter or needed to be a 6 episode television show.
Yes.
And that's how I feel about this movie. It's like scary stories to tell in the dark. Should be this should have been a mini series. This should have been 5 episodes, like 5 45-minute episodes. I think it would have been a lot stronger. Or if it had been 15 minutes shorter and narratively it did more. I don't know. It would
Just
have had to have been
really
shorter.
tightened it up. Yeah.
Really tightened it up. I think it would have worked better. But I had to break it into 2 parts because it started it at 8 o'clock last night, and by the time I got to like the last half hour, I was nodding off. I was like, "This movie's too long. Need to watch more of it tomorrow." And that's what I did when I got home from work today. I just threw it on.
Well, I also want to say not every like not every character or script requires character growth. Like this isn't necessarily a genre where you need to grow as a character.
Mhm.
Uh, like you could have easily cut 10 minutes just with like scenes with her and her dad. Cuz unless they're really going to build on that in the next movie and they're setting something up, like she has so many like heartfelt scenes with her father that honestly bring nothing to the movie. They're just about like her emotional journey.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
there was backstory. It felt like they were building towards something by including the backstory of like her mom left when she was really young, and she never wants to leave her dad.
I thought
Um,
that was going to be one of the scary stories because like we talked about like there was the ones in the last book about like people who accidentally got locked in trunks and stuff.
hmm.
And I thought it was going to
Oh, that would
turn
have been.
out that her mom never did leave. Like she had been in the house the whole time and like gotten like locked in a trunk or something and they were going to pull one of those scary stories out because they put so much emotional energy into it and nothing just there was no payoff.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that was. I wonder that could totally be it. Actually, that would have made a lot of sense
Right?
if somehow her mother was tied back into story and she was also like, yeah, yeah, that would have been a much stronger narrative. Find out that the mother like also was a victim of one of these cursed stories.
Yeah. Or wasn't. Like I think that would have been better, but like what if the mother had just like had a bad accident and like everyone just thought she ghosted, but really like, they just never found her body. Because there's stories like that in the Scary Stories book and you can just tie one in and like even that could have been her catharsis where she's just like my mom didn't leave because of me.
My mom was locked in this trunk because we
Yeah.
were playing hide and seek when I was
Yes.
4 years old.
Exactly. My mom didn't ghost on me when we were playing hide and seek and just leave. My mom was hiding and I never found her and she died. Like
Oh, much better.
it it would have at least made that 15 minutes worth it.
Yeah.
There would have been some payoff. But anyway, I feel like we've milked this one quite a bit.
And we're still. I would say check it out if you're a fan of the books.
It's worth
I would
it.
say check this. Yeah, check it out. It's
There's
fine.
enough there's enough Easter eggs, there's enough nods, and the stuff that's good is really good. So, yeah, try it out. And if you're by the time you're not feeling it and you want to turn it off, it's basically okay to turn it off anyway.
Yeah, you know how it's gonna end.
Yeah. Like if you do get to the point where you're like this is kind of running long, let me tell you you're not missing much from that point on.
They're not breaking any narrative ground here.
Yeah. Get through the cool shit and, just enjoy it. Okay. Where can they find us, Sam?
Well, they can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're at RTSpiritsPod. Please leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you think we should cover in the future. Tell us if you've seen this movie, what you thought of it, if you read the books. We want to know what you think.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And thank you for sitting through 3 entire episodes about scary stories to tell in the dark.
Hope you liked it. We'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.